My relationship with my dad is strong. My name's Felicia Lewis, and I'm 19. I'm a freshman at Oakwood University. I just switched my major to social work, and I guess I write poetry sometimes. That's it. So my dad grew up in East Oakland, California, and as a kid, he was bullied for being kind of light-skinned, and it made him more interested in his roots and his blackness. He eventually grew up and became a poet, and a lot of his poems were focused around his black identity and finding out more about his black identity and uplifting black culture and all that stuff. He published a poetry book, and most of the poems are based around that and police violence that he himself and like his friends have experienced. He met my mom maybe when he was 20 something, because I believe she said she was 19 when he was her first boyfriend, and eventually they got together and had my brother and then me and then my sister. Is that decent? My relationship with my dad has always been really good as far as I can remember. He's always been like there, so there's not a time that I don't remember him being around. In fact, he was around the most, I think, because mom used to go to work and he used to stay home, and he used to take us out to like the park. Sometimes we used to go to the forest, my brother and my father and I. And one time we did breakfast. He showed us how to make a fire out of from dry little sticks into bigger sticks until he made like a big little bonfire. And he heated up a rock and made eggs on it and bacon, turkey bacon. And we ate breakfast in the forest, and then we walked around and listened to nature and everything. So he was always an adventurous person. Sometimes we went on road trips. He had a big truck, an old school Chevy truck, and its engine was really powerful, and it sounded like a monster growling whenever he turned it on. And he used to drive around in that, and we would just go like wherever the freeway led to. One time we got lost in what I called the middle of nowhere. I think we were in Sacramento, California, but in like the little like the industrial area where there's not a lot of buildings. And we ate tacos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner off the same truck because we got lost and kept circling back to that same spot. And that was the type of stuff we just did together. His love language is probably quality time, one of them, because that's what we used to do all the time, just spend time together. He still calls me baby girl and princess. And so as far as the relationship goes, that's really how he treated me. I was his first daughter, so he treated me like the little princess that I believe that I am. And that might make me a little bit spoiled. A little bit. And he always wanted, I guess, when I was little, it seemed like he was just really annoying and overprotective. But as I've grown up, I've been able to realize that he just wanted me shaped in a way where I could stand on my own eventually. I'm gonna start crying. Why am I crying? I don't feel like crying yet. What's the next question? Okay, so he spent a lot of time trying to structure me, trying to build a foundation for me to be able to sustain myself. But also treated me like a princess, and I feel like that most of that was so that I would know my worth when I got to this age. Okay, what's next? Without my dad as my backbone, I wouldn't be as strong as I am today, and I wouldn't be as capable of enduring. When I was really little, like little enough to still be sleeping in my parents' bed, I remember he got this tattoo, and I didn't know he got it, and I was moving around on the bed, and I accidentally stepped on his stomach, and he started screaming, and I knew he was screaming too much for it to just be me stepping on his stomach because I was small, and I didn't weigh that much. And I found out later that he had gotten a tattoo across there, and he was trying to keep it a secret because Mom told him not to get any tattoos. Yeah, but it says no surrender, and it has an African symbol on either side. And I remember I used to, whenever we were out, if he stopped to talk to his friends, or, whenever I felt like there was a lot going on, I would put my head underneath his shirt, and I would trace my fingers across the no surrender. And that didn't seem like a whole lot when I was doing it, but yeah, that tattoo is really representative of who he is as a person and the values that he instilled into me as his baby girl. And so I feel like that's one of the major things that my relationship with him has been able to give me is strength. I've been able to show me his strength. I know that if I did not have him to lean on, I would be a mess constantly. I would be a mess because he was and still is a role model of how a man should be and how a father should be and how a husband should be. And one of the best role models, actually, when I was growing up, I didn't recognize that. He used to tell me little life stories in between just anything. He would just come up with some life story, and I thought it was annoying because I was like, everything doesn't have to be a lesson. But all the stuff that he was telling me when I was in elementary school has come to fruition. He was like, he used to tell me to stay motivated and get my work done in school. It was always work first, play second. And he said, and I would tell him, oh, well, they don't do that like that in class, and all my friends are whatever. And he would tell me, okay, but you'll see, once you start getting older, you'll see that those people start to fall off, and those people, they don't make it to college, and they don't do whatever. And I was like, that's negative. Like, why would you say that? But he was right. He was on to something. And he was always on to something. It used to bug me because I was like, he think he always know everything. But he usually knew what he was talking about. One of the other things he used to tell me was, it's better for him to correct my mistakes, or for anyone in the house to correct my mistakes in the house, because I know that it's being corrected with love. Whereas if he lets them pass, or he lets me continue to be wrong or do something out of pocket, right? And then I go out into the world, when they correct me, it's not going to be with love, and it's going to hurt, and it's not going to be nice. And I hated that because I was like, just let me do what I do, and whatever, it's fine. But again, as I grew up, like he used to love to tell me, as I grew up, I was able to see that it is better to be corrected with love than to be out in the world. And I feel like I'm privileged, so privileged, to have for him to have been there from start to finish, or start to current, because it's not finished, start to current, start to present, to have him have been there from start to present, teaching with love, because without that, there's like no telling what kind of mess I would be in. One of my earliest memories with my dad is when I had to be like 5, between 3 and 5. I had the flu and I was stuck in bed, and I was so sad because I really wanted to play and I couldn't because I was sick. So I'm laying there, and he would come in periodically to check on me and to give me my medicine. And he came in there this one time, and he was stroking my hair, and he was just looking at me. And I was like, okay, like, what are you looking at? And eventually he told me, eventually he said that eventually he had said to me that he wished he could take all of my pain away. If he could, he would, and he would just hold it within himself, if that meant that I wouldn't have to feel it anymore. And when he said that, because I was like between 3 and 5, I was like, okay, but you can't. So, it didn't really mean anything. Like, I thought it was nice that he thought that, but it wasn't until it didn't mean anything for real until I got older. I was thinking about that story again in February, because I was sitting in my bed, sad and heartbroken, and it was just a lot of pain. And I was thinking that I really wanted to talk to him about it, but I was scared to, because for a long time I didn't want to talk about boys with him, because I know he didn't want me to talk to any boys because he was afraid that I was going to get hurt. And I always wanted to protect him from me being hurt, because I knew it would hurt him. And I kept thinking about how he told me he would take away all my pain if he could. So eventually I called him, and I started crying almost immediately. And I could hear in his voice how sad he was to hear me so sad. And so he listened to me talk and cry on the phone for 2 hours, at least 2 hours. And we just talked about, he told me different stories about how he went through similar situations. And he told me different stories about him going through a similar situation as mine. And we really sat there and both cried on the phone for a little bit. And in that moment, by the end of the phone call, I was able to recognize that my dad wasn't just daddy. He was also a person. And that was, what is the word that I want to use for that? I don't know what it was. It was just big news. I think we're going to go ahead and sound cliche. For a long time, it was like an ongoing joke, sort of, that me and my mom and my brother and my sister had, that he was Superman, or he was like a superhero. And that's true. Like, I believe that for real. He's like Superman. He's always doing, saving, protecting, without really any regard for himself. Um, but giving him those attributes, or giving him that title, giving him those attributes or that title kind of took away or prevented me from seeing all of his humanity. And so to me, he was always Daddy the superhero, but not just like, I didn't recognize that he was, it's like it prevented me from seeing the entirety of his being. And so when we sat on the phone and talked for 2+ hours, and both of us sat there and cried, and I recognized that he struggled the way that I struggle, which is, it just seemed weird for him to like, Daddy was in love before Mom and got his heart broken. Like, that's crazy. That doesn't happen. Like, what? Yeah, I feel like that strengthened the relationship, because now it opened up, it made it possible for me to feel like I can talk to him. I can just tell him like whatever. I can just walk up to him and start talking about whatever I'm going through, and he's going to understand it, because now I can see that literally, he used to say all the time, there's nothing new under the sun. And, I understand what that means, but like now I can see it clearly. Like, there's literally nothing new under the sun. He's done all the things, he's felt all the things that I can do or feel. And so he can relate to me when I want to tell him something. And yeah, that was, I want to say record breaking. I don't know if that's the right word. It just, yeah, it opened my eyes to a lot, and it really strengthened the relationship that was already really strong. Because my dad was so protective, he still is really protective, but not as much as when I was little. Because he was so protective, I was like afraid to tell him it's different stuff. Yeah, I would just be quiet. I just wouldn't share. A lot of high school, um, a lot of anything that had to do with a boy ever, a lot of that I just didn't ever tell him, because I didn't want him to be disappointed, and I didn't want him to be worried, and I just didn't want him to like trip, So I feel like that was I don't know if it was necessarily a challenge. Maybe it was, because it was a challenge because it prevented me from being as comfortable and as open with him as I could have been. It took longer for me to get there. It took a slight breaking point for me to establish that part of our relationship. Whereas maybe if he was less protective or less strict when I was little, all that part that I just discussed would have happened sooner. I don't think it was bad though that he was strict and protective, because I think that had its benefits in the person that I've become. Because there's a lot of stuff that I had no business doing that I didn't do because I was afraid of disappointing him. Another challenge though, I've been writing poetry since 6th grade. I know I said I kind of write a little. I've been writing since 6th grade. A lot of my poems were about boys and hurt feelings and whatever for a long time. And I think I'm pretty decent, but I didn't show him any of them for real, because his poems were not like that. His poems were about blackness and power, and they were kind of angry, a lot of them. And I didn't want to disappoint, and I didn't want him to feel like I was soft, because he was building me into this strong, independent young woman. And I didn't want him to think that he was failing, and I didn't want him to think that I was not capable of being strong and independent. Even now I'm crying and I'm like, ugh, what are tears? Yeah. I didn't want him to think that I was like weak, because I always viewed him as someone who was so strong and powerful, and I wanted to make him proud and follow in his footsteps as being strong and powerful. An example of that, he taught me how to fight so that I would always be able to protect myself. And then he taught me never to start a fight, and never to throw the first punch. Always only as a means of self-defense. But however, I did instigate a couple times because I wanted him to be proud. So sometimes I ran my mouth in order to provoke a person to throw the first punch or push me or whatever, so that I could fire off on them, as he used to say. And then he would get called to the office and hear about it. And then I got to tell him the story about how I won, because I always won. And I was particularly proud of myself because I knew he would be proud when it was boys. It was always boys. Boys always wanted to fight me in elementary school. And that was like my thing. I would fight the boys and I would win, and everyone would be so shocked, like, oh my goodness, you don't look like, whatever. And he used to tell his friends, when he would go see them, he would call me down and he would show them like how I know how to block and all this stuff. And he would tell them about how I was fighting this boy and that boy and I won. And then he would see them in the office crying, and I never cried. And all that was like, not even because I'm a fighter. I'm not even really a fighter like that. But I used to do it because he taught me how to fight, and they deserved to be fought. And I knew he'd be satisfied with my efforts. I feel like a lot of the growing up period of time was focused on making him proud, which wasn't hard to do because he was always proud of me. But I had fixed it in my mind that this is going to make him proud, this isn't going to make him proud. So either I would hide whatever this was from him, or I would just never do it. And it was unnecessary, but I didn't know at the time. So that, I guess, could be another challenge of our initial relationship. What role do fathers play in our community? Well, I went to a school that was inner city, where a lot of it was a predominantly black school, and most of the kids did not have their fathers in their lives for whatever reason. And we had I was in first grade, and we had a career type day, and all the kids were asked what they want to do when they grow up. And I remember my brother put down something like he wants to be a father and a husband and have kids and have a nice job and whatever, raise his family, and he was going to be great, right? Typical, like, success story, except for that wasn't the typical story at that school. Most of the little boys said they wanted to be drug dealers. One of them said that he was going to have him a little girlfriend, and he was going to slap her around if she talked back. And they was going to have nice cars and gold chains and all kind of stuff because they were going to sell drugs and be rich and all that kind of thing. And that was everyone's goal in first, second, third grade. That was their goals. And it was because I believe that they don't have a father figure in their life that was showing them any different. So the ones that did have daddies the ones that did have daddies had daddies that were showing them that type of lifestyle, which is not beneficial in any way, shape, or form. The kids were watching their parents fight all the time or watching their mom get beat up by their dad. And it just indoctrinated them with a bunch of negative stereotypes and characteristics that they would take into their lives as young adults and then adults. And with positive male role models in their life, like the wonderful, amazing father that I have, they would have been better. Like they would have had better perspective of all that they were capable of and all that they could do if they, put their mind to it, if they tried in school, if they worked toward having good relationships. But all that was lost because of the lack of a father or the lack of a good father. And then those same people grew up and became those things that they wanted to become. Those goals that they had set for themselves in elementary school, they made them come to fruition. They're not in college now. Some of them are in jail. One of them, I just saw on the news, was robbing stores. So all that is lack of a father. Dear Daddy. Oh boy. Why immediately when I said Dear Daddy, my eyes want to start crying again? Dear Daddy, I love you to a million pieces. Oh. I am exceedingly grateful for you, more than words can express. I'm lightweight pressed that you had me crying for the entire video. But I understand that the reason for my tears is not because I'm sad, but because I just recognize how blessed I really am to have you. And I listened to so many of these videos get produced, And I've watched so many of the people that I've known throughout my short 19 years grow up without a father. And you've been such a father and more that I can't help but fall apart on the camera when I talk about you. So thank you. And I love you. Also, very importantly, my dad is goofy. He's so goofy. It's ridiculous. He would be so proud of me to know I had sat here and laughed for 15 minutes before making the actual video. And he's kind of hilarious, a little bit like me. Almost as much as me. Almost. He likes board games. He likes Monopoly a lot. That's important. He used to stay up and play Monopoly with us if we asked. And Monopoly's like a 4-hour game. He also used to play video games with us. Oh my goodness. Back in the good old days, there was this, he would take us to the, Best Buy and to Toys R Us. And he would go to get a game or a movie for himself. And he would let me and my brother both pick a movie or a game. And we used to do this like every week, and we used to just do that, and then we would go home. He also used to play and or watch. He used to make us ice together. We used to do treats together cool. Too. He used to have a really big sweet tooth, and he used to make a big bowl of ice cream, like with the whole half gallon, and put it in his bowl, and then he would put raisins on it, and like cherries and blackberries, and then pour 7-Up. And I thought that was disgusting. I still think that's disgusting. Another thing, but it's one of his things. He really gets on my nerves a lot by he's extremely loving. It's terrible. Oh my goodness. When I was little, he used to always tuck me in, and that was like birth through high school probably. And I'm pretty sure when I go home, in 2 days, when I go to bed, he will come in and tuck me in. At 19, he will. Yeah. I don't know if he'll probably never stop. As long as I come home to his house, he'll probably still tuck me in. And that used to bother me. It probably doesn't anymore. One time he tried to do my hair for me. We'll see when I get back. He did a terrible job. That's it. It was awful. He didn't use any grease. He put it up in a bun up here, and he didn't use any grease, and so it didn't stay. It just looked terrible. But he tried. One of my other earliest memories, I was very tiny. I thought that was nice. So I don't know. Maybe I was still between the same 3 to 5 age range. And there was music playing in the living room, and I was standing on his feet, and I guess he was dancing, I was standing, and I thought I was a little princess because I was standing on his feet while he twirled me around. And that's basically, that's basically what the relationship was. Him being goofy, me kind of following along. He used to make me wear boys' clothes because he didn't want any of the boys to talk to me. Fitting into the role of baby girl. Whom I still am. He used to do that. That's real. He still calls me that. I respect. Oh my goodness. And he told me, he was like, that's my only name, really, actually. I don't want you to wear those jeans. They're too tight. And the dresses were always too short, regardless of their length. And everything, he didn't like girl clothes. So he had me wear my brother's clothes. And that was fine with me because I was like, okay, whatever to make daddy happy, And then I went to school. It was in 3rd grade. And the little boy that I liked in 3rd grade was talking to my friends, and they were like, oh, you like Felicia? And he was like, not today. She looked like a boy. And oh, my heart was broken. But he used to do those little things. It hurt so bad. Oh my goodness. You don't understand how upset I was with my father on that day. But it was all love. It was all love. And it builds character. I have so much character now because of him. He's such a blessing. He has a business in alternative medicine. That's very important. Can't believe I left that out. He makes detoxes and stuff. He's currently working on a woman or a man, I don't know, who has 16 tumors on their lungs. And that's pretty terrible. But he's working with them and they're getting better. They used to couldn't talk at all, like without running out of breath, and now I think it is a woman. She walks around talking. She won't be quiet. And he's only been working with her for a short period of time. That's God's medicine.